Welcome to Campaign for Liberty. My name is Lowell Sheets. I'm just one of the steering committee members. I'm the guy they just make do this because no one else wants to. No. Anyway, we're going to start in just a moment with our pledge to the flag and with a prayer. But how many people are here for the very first time? Anybody here for the very, very, very first time? All veterans. Yep. All veterans. Okay. All right. I'm glad you're here for this secret meeting. Okay. All right. Let's stand together and let's open in a word of prayer and then the pledge to the flag. Dear Father, we thank you so much for everything that you've provided us with, for who you are and what you've done, and that you've given us your grace and your mercy, the freedom and the liberty enjoyed by those of us who are here, and for all the good gifts that you gave us through our founding fathers and the men that have fought and died to preserve our way of life. I pray that you would give us the courage and the boldness and the wisdom to do the best that we can, and with your help, to turn the tide against statism, against the coming police state, against all the things that we see and we hear, and we know that can't continue without some serious, serious consequences. And we just pray for life and for health and for the future of our children and our grandchildren. And we thank you for your love for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. For those of you who are not as familiar with who we are, I'll give you this super brief explanation. Campaign for Liberty was founded because America stands at a crossroads. We can continue to believe the guarantees of those currently in power, or we can forge a new path, reinvigorating our economy, transforming our foreign policy, and securing our civil liberties. Campaign for Liberty's mission is to promote and defend the great American principles of individual liberty, constitutional government, sound money, free markets, and a non-interventionist foreign policy by means of educational and political activity. Liberty is the noblest of political causes, and among political organizations, we stand alone in defending and promoting it consistently and comprehensively. With your help, we can prevent the American dream from being taxed, regulated, and spent out of existence. And as Thomas Paine put it, we fight not to enslave, but to set a country free, and not to make room upon, and to make room upon the earth for honest men to live in. That's why we're here. Amen? Right, okay. We've got some great speakers tonight, and we're going to get straight to them and get on time. That's pretty awesome. Our first speaker, and how many of you here are really here because you heard about the Common Core, and that's something that's very, very near and dear to your heart? Okay, quite a few. Our first speaker, we're very privileged to have him here. He's an old friend from 15 minutes ago. This gentleman is a homeschooling parent, so we have that in common, except my wife did all the work, and I get really zero credit, but I'll take a little bit right here. He's the Executive Vice President of the Education Freedom Committee. He's the County Coordinator for the Frederick Campaign for Liberty, and he's also the Treasurer for the Frederick GOP. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to Jason Laird.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for inviting me here tonight. I really appreciate it. We're a new group, Education Freedom Committee, and we are focusing right now on Common Core, but we hope to expand our activities to include lots of other states and try to get freedom to learn. That's what we want to get towards. We want to get towards a society where people are free to go with the public system or not go with the public system and not be penalized for it. But for right now, we're going to talk about Common Core tonight. And it's I have up here as a subtitle, An Introduction to the Latest Step in the Progressive Vision to Produce Human Resources. And this is important, this word human resources. This is something that really ties it together, and in a minute I'll show you how. Good, next slide. Did anyone see the commercial that this lady was in not too long ago? It's quite a striking commercial. Kind of took my breath away when I first saw it. She said many things, but the most pertinent here is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families. She was more of the opinion that our kids are not ours, or our kids are not their own, really. I mean, each human being really is free in and of themselves. We are blessed by God to be custodians of our children, but really the idea that a human being would be free is anathema to her, and the idea that not even do they belong to their parents or their their families, but basically she's saying they belong to the state, and that kind of says it all for the frame of mind that people are in right now as regards to the topic of education. Next slide. All right, so when did this ideology begin in our country? It really has its roots in my studies in the Progressive Era, in the 1890s, 1900 time frame. That time in our country's history when we had a movement called Progressive Era, and we had wealthy industrialists, academians, powerful politicians who really began creating institutions that we have today. That the bedrock of is public schooling, and they really created something that would withstand time, and it has. The system that we have today was created by and bankrolled by early wealthy industrialists, Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller General Education Board, which became the Rockefeller Foundation, or became rolled into the Rockefeller Foundation, and later on the Ford Foundation. These private interests really bankroll all the original schools, teacher colleges, the methods and form by which people will be taught in public schools. And they lobbied each state to pass compulsory schooling laws. And between 1900 and 1915 in our country, every single state in the Union at the time, of course we didn't have Hawaii and Alaska at the time, but they all passed the compulsory schooling laws. And it started out with, 6 to 12-year-old, then they expanded it 6 to 14, and 5 to 14, and they've kept expanding it, again and again throughout the past 100 years. And this is the underlying philosophy is that by confiscating the children of the community, they would work under a certain plan throughout the schooling project and become human resources for these companies, these corporations, and the government. Now, early on, this was not something that was. It was opposed, but it wasn't as opposed as it has been lately, because the content that they were putting in the schools was not that objectionable. It was culturally similar to everyone that was in the country at the time. They didn't push the envelope culturally. There wasn't the homosexual agenda. There wasn't the evolution. People of faith sometimes have a problem with evolution. There's all these different items that have been pushed through the system that people now have a problem with. Back then, it was not objectionable content, but the whole program of schooling was a problem. And so, we go to the next slide, please. So here's a little bit more. You can get into the mindset of the people who started schooling. This is from the General Education Board, one of the massive first contributors to the system. In a letter, they stated, "In our dreams, people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present educational conventions, intellectual and character education, fade from our minds." Intellectual and character fade from the minds. Okay? And unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, educators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple. We will organize children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way. So basically, you're no good for your children. We know better. We're going to take them, we're going to process them through the system, and like a factory, these men all had factories, you know, the automobile industry, the oil, rail, coal, all these different industries at the time needed workers, and they needed people not to ask questions. And this is the mindset of the folks who started schooling back then. Next slide, please. This is our 28th president, Woodrow Wilson. He was the president of Columbia University. He was a PhD. He's one of supposedly the smartest presidents we ever had. He was right before he became president. Shortly before he became president, it was he was giving an address to the School Teachers Association in New York, and he said, "We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privilege of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks." And this is basically, you know, in public. I mean, the previous letter was public. This was public. At the time, this was the philosophy. The progressive philosophy was not something that was hidden. It was not a hidden agenda. It was an open philosophy that people were discussing in the American aristocratic circles. Next slide, please. Now we've had an unending chain of the increase of this system over an expansion in each and every child's life throughout the past 100 years. There have been many times when there's been laws passed to increase this. Department of Education in the Carter era, even under Reagan and the first Bush, there was an expansion. And then we come up to more recently, I figured I'd just do a few examples. During the Clinton administration, it was Goals 2000. During the Bush administration, it was No Child Left Behind. And now, under our present president, we have Race to the Top. And these are the three precursors to what we have now in Common Core. And Common Core really is an extension of this philosophy from the progressive era on through to today. And these are the latest examples of this push. And so we'll go on to the next slide. This is the Department of Education head, Arne Duncan. And before he was in Washington, he was in Chicago. And he ran the Chicago public school system. At the time, he received over $40 million from the Gates Foundation, not personally, but through the grants to the different organizations he belonged to and to the public school system itself. I've done a lot of research into the funding of the Gates Foundation, and it has not given really any more money since this guy transitioned from the Chicago public school system into the Obama administration. Now the money is coming to the Obama administration. So it's transitioned to this Race to the Top program, and all the different companies and nonprofits and state governments and local governments are taking money from the Gates Foundation because, through this. Next slide, please. Here's some of the financials. This is from the Washington Post, but you can actually go on the Gates Foundation site and pull these numbers up yourself. You can do searches on who's getting money from the Gates Foundation for this Common Core effort. Most of these are hyperlinked, but there's two that aren't. I made them just black there. Council of Chief State School Officers and Achieve Inc. These are two of the key elements in the Common Core rollout when they were making up the Common Core. You can see they're getting a lot of money from the Gates Foundation. There's over 150 million so far has gone to every different type of nonprofit, local government, corporations who are in on this. Now, I kind of view this as inducements to accept and to push Common Core. Some people may view it as a bribe. I don't know. So if you go on to the next slide. And by the way, that list is very short. That's just 20. There's hundreds. So those are some of the bigger ones. I put the bigger dollar denominations up there first. So we have, so now the federal government also spends money on this, not just the Gates Foundation, but the federal government also spends money on this. The stimulus bill from '09 is when the race to the top came out of that. 4.3 billion there, Department of Education, and then the race to the top. So they would give money out to people to induce them to agree to the program. Now, they didn't say explicitly in the race to the top program. The Obama administration didn't say explicitly, you take this money and then you implement Common Core. They didn't want to be seen as dictating to the states what they were doing, so they kind of, it's not really that clear, the connection, on purpose. They don't want the connection to be that clear. So, if anyone tells you, oh no, race to the top has nothing to do with Common Core, it's not mandated, they're right. It's not 100% mandated, but you know how the federal government does things. So you get money for roads if you put the speed limit at what they want, so on and so forth. So we have now both the wealthy foundations and the government both pushing for Common Core, and people really in race to the top wanted to get out of No Child Left Behind. Many states are very unhappy with No Child Left Behind, and I can't blame them. So without explaining what was coming next, they said, okay, we'll give you a waiver. You can take this money, get the waiver, if you agree to go on with the next program. Remember how I was showing you the different programs, Goals 2000, No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top. They said you can get out of the last program if you agree to follow whatever the next program is down the pike. But they didn't explain to them what that next program was. Next slide, please. So who is Common Core? It's two different, basically there's just two different pieces to this. This is the standards organization that pushes out what the standards are supposed to be for the schools. And then the testing units. And these are all DC-based entities. You'll hear people talk about state-led, Common Core is state-led, and it's just the people. This is not state-led at all. This is downtown DC all the way. Achieving, National Government Association, Council of Chief State School Officers. These last two, the bottom two, National Governor and National Governors and the Council, are sound kind of like government, but they're not. They are DC-based trade associations, and they're not accountable to any voters anywhere. So, and they are heavily funded by the Gates Foundation. And the Gates connection here I'm trying to explain to you is how the original thing started with the Rockefellers, Carnegie's Foundation, Ford Foundation, and the Gates Foundation is just another one of these wealthy industrial foundations. His industry happens to be software. It's a little different than coal and oil and cars, but it's the same kind of idea nonetheless. Now the testing groups were funded directly by the Department of Education. And there's two instances here, the consortium. Okay, next slide, please. This is the academician, if you will, behind the standards. So we've heard about the government's part, we've heard about the Wealthy Foundation's part. This is the guy whose idea. There was other people involved, obviously, but he's the point man. So this guy, David Coleman, he founded and ran various nonprofits and for-profit companies related to educational efforts. And he, basically, when he was done, he was rewarded with the College Board. The College Board he's now the head of the College Board, now he's moved on from the Common Core stuff. The College Board, if you don't know, they're in charge of the SATs, the ACTs, the AP exams, in school when you take advanced placement courses in school. That's what the College Board is all about. So why this is interesting is because if he's determining, or is the lead determining the standards of what everyone's supposed to know, and he's also in charge of the hoops you have to jump through to get to if you want to go to higher education, the testing, then that's a powerful position to be in if you're in charge of making this, and then you're in charge of the tests. So in a lot of ways, private schooling, homeschooling folks still have to pay attention to this stuff for lots of reasons. This is one of the main reasons I see is that if homeschoolers want to be able to go to the next level, go to secondary education, and go to college and universities, a lot of times you have to pass SAT or ACT or so forth, and that really is going to come into play, I think. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked about the who. Here's the what. It's massive centralization. I mean, just on an epic scale. All 60 million kids, going through the same program. And whereas, in the past, there was some of that, but it was a lot of, some states do it a little bit differently than other states. The goal is to force everyone into the centralized model. The data collection is pretty unbelievable. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but the data collection is if you're worried about the government having your information, this is going to be scary as well. And obedience. The obedience, and I have to the state, so it's obedience training, what schooling is. That's what testing really is all about, obedience. And not to a family who loves you, not to a faith community, but to the state, to the wealthy industrialists who are in collusion with the state. So they started with just math and English language arts, but actually science is right on their tail here in Maryland. And there was an example back in Goals 2000, a few iterations ago of this, where it was, they tried to roll out a Common Core history type thing. It wasn't called that, but that was the idea of it, was to have a centralized history thing. And there was so much bias in there. It was so awful. The history was so awful that it just failed epically, and everyone just ignored it. But this, so they got smart. They said, well, we'll do something a little less objectionable. Who can complain about math, or English language arts? Well, I can't for one. Go ahead, next one. So, the English language arts, there's lots of things I can go into. I just picked one or two things out. Literature versus informational text. Informational text is your non-fiction. It's things that you would read a manual or an autobiography or these types of texts. And the idea David Coleman has is he wants people to be more into informational text and not so much into literature, which is the history of learning is literature in the English language arts area. This is, I've read a lot and heard a lot discussed by Dr. Stotsky, Sandra Stotsky. She was on the Common Core Validation Committee early on. And they didn't consult with any parents or teachers or children. They had experts, of course, and she's one of the experts, and she says, this is no good. So she left the validation committee, and she's not the only one. The next guy, James Milgram, in number 2 here, he's a professor of math. He says, this is non-recursive math program. He says folks who want to be able to get into calculus before they leave high school will not be able to. And they may be 2 years behind in the sequence if they wanted to really do up math well. I mean, if that's what clicks for them, if that's what they're about. Some of the kids are better at English, some are better at math. He said it's not going to be good for math students. So loss of privacy, like I was telling you about this collecting data, there is, it's called Maryland Longitudinal Data System. And what this will do is, one of the many things it will do is it'll connect, what they're trying to do is connect workforce data and child education data. So they want to track you all the way through from your pre-18 record to your post-18 work record. And it's just too much to go into, but I would recommend anybody who has time to look into this to take a look at what they're going to be collecting. Number 4, dumbing down students. Race to the middle, not the top. So my thing is there's no really average child, which is what they're trying to get at here. They're trying to get at an average, a common child. child. They want to have a common amount of learning, common level of learning. But in my experience, there is no average child. Every child's unique. Every child learns at his own pace, his or her own pace. They're interested in different subjects at different times. There's nothing common about children. They're widely varied like snowflakes. So this is probably one of the things that I feel the most about, because my wife and I do homeschool our 4 children, and we've experienced over the years an amazing amount of variety just in our own children, let alone someone else's children. And so I find it incredibly arrogant that people would have this outlook towards children. Too much testing. My home county of Frederick has set aside 27 days for testing. When we contacted them on it, they said, "Oh no, it's not 27. This is just in case. We have a couple extra days we need." Well, even if it's padded a little bit, it's still ridiculous that you would lose this many days of instruction. I mean, I know we already lose a lot of days of instruction in the public school system, but 27 days is a bit much for testing, I think. And we have worldview bias. Now, this is the one that most people think of right away, when they're talking about the education system. I don't want this, liberal bias or whatever your pet peeve is as far as content is concerned. Now, this is a problem, but I don't want people to focus on that as the problem. The whole system is the problem. Whether you put conservative content or liberal content or religious content or some other kind of content, the whole package is the problem. So, but there is definitely worldview bias in this stuff. I would highly recommend checking out a Utahns Against Common Core site. They have a really good, Zahner Bloser is one of the textbook companies, and they have an example. They go through a few textbooks and they show you worldview bias, and of course it's to the left. The bias is to the left. So so if you have time, check that out. I won't go into it because it would take a while. And then loss of flexibility is the last one, by children, loss of flexibility by parents, loss of flexibility by teachers who have to do the work every day. Next, thanks. So what can we do? Well, my favorite one is the first one, personal, depopulate the system, just get out. But not everyone can get out. So the idea is you might be able to put pressure against the system. If you can't leave it, you might be able to say, well, maybe we just won't take the test, or maybe we won't, go along with what the different items of the data collection are. So that's what you do on a personal level. So on a professional level, of course, you can, if you are an engineer, a scientist, someone who knows something about math, and you have a professional, know-how to bring to bear on the subject, you can send information to friends, family, relatives, so forth, to take a look at it. Take a look at the information, give your professional opinion, and go to the county school board, go to the state school board, go to the state legislatures in your area, and tell them why it isn't, like James Milgram said, the math program wasn't rigorous and so forth. And then the political, which is part of what this group is about. So it's should come as no surprise to you how we attack in the politics. We try to defund it. So that's mainly what our group is about, is trying to seek representatives who will help us in the state legislature here, and we're trying to do it in other states eventually, defund the system, introduce legislation that we could attack the other legislators on who aren't going the way we think they should, and try to get them to defund it. And civil disobedience here, I mentioned this earlier at the top when we were talking about personal, but there's a guy who's near and dear to my heart, John Taylor Gatto, one of the guys who I've been studying for quite a while. He has this Bartleby project, and it was before Common Core even started. The Bartleby project basically is civil disobedience. Don't take the test. But that's for advanced. That's something you got to do on your own, not that's up to the individual person. civil disobedience is a tough thing. So anyway, so we have a website I just want to let you guys know about, eduliberty.com. And we're just getting started here this year, so we could really use your help. You can donate at this site here. That would go a long way to helping us at the Maryland State Legislature level, but we're also trying to hit some other states in Delaware and Michigan, and we're talking to people in California as well. So we have some good contacts, and we're trying to do some good work. And every $10 helps. So if you can help us out like that, that'd be great. I try to keep it short enough to have time for questions and answers. So if anyone has any questions at this time? Vicki?
A little bit off the topic, what do you know about the International Baccalaureate program? We have one of those magnet schools here in Harford County, and from what I've seen, it just looks to me like UN-directed globalist education that teaches our children how to accept government that is based on inalienable rights and a constitution like ours.
Yeah, you're right. It is globalist in nature, international baccalaureate. I had a friend of mine who went through that program in high school when I was in high school. He went to a magnet program, for that, and you're right. That's what that is about. Right now the IB is trying to get in sync with Common Core, and so even though they have their own kind of agenda, they're still even trying to get behind and line up with Common Core. So, like I said, it affects lots of different people, not just the mainline public school system. So, anyone else? Sure.
There's probably no easy answer to this, but is there anything that local elected officials can do, like local school board members that are elected can do about this problem? Can they speak up? Can they do anything about it that you're aware of?
Well, you can always try. You can always try to contact your local school board and become a fixture. But to be honest with you, our opinion, the Education Freedom Committee, is state legislatures. That's the way we're going to have to attack this thing. We're going to have to go after our state representatives and our state senators in Annapolis to oppose this and defund it and give the autonomy to the local counties and parents and teachers. So you can and we have people in Frederick doing that, and it'd be great. I think you guys probably have people here doing that too. But really, the focus for killing it, the best hope is to go after the state legislature. Cindy?
If I can add a few things and correct me, or we all need to keep learning, but in my research, it's just every day is new stuff. But I think in Maryland, constitutionally and then by statute law, the Maryland State Department of Education has its own autonomy. There are certain things it has to go to the legislature for. It then rules the counties. The counties are not autonomous.
Yep.
We can bat our heads against the wall in the county board meetings all we want, but the state school board is who makes these decisions. And then the legislators, you say about bringing new legislation. Well, let us first confront those very same Republican legislators, and if any are in the room, I invite you to look at your own voting record on how they voted for the pieces of this, because it's not just one piece of legislation. I've been doing a lot of research, and it's a little bit here, it's a little bit there. It's in a P20 Leadership Council. It's in a college to career ready. It's in the GED changes, just to make sure they put Common Core in there. And most of our Republican legislators have voted for every single one of these things.
Yep, that's right. And it's designed, the system, like I said, was designed a long time ago, and it was designed to be confusing. It was designed to be no single point of failure. You can't get at the decision makers easily. It was designed to be as far away from the voters as possible. And you're right. I mean, it's really the state board is the one who initiated a lot of this, and the legislators helped with all these different little things that they added in amongst the legislation. So, any other questions?
Yes, you mentioned 4.35 billion was under the stimulus bill.
Race to the top,
Went
yeah.
through the Federal Department of Education, and they created the Race to the Top.
Right.
How did Maryland fit into that as far as the allocation of that? They obviously asked for it.
Sure. Maryland did, and they got money. I just don't have those numbers in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're right. Maryland is a part of that. They took the money. Sure.
So are you saying that the Dumbing Down America is the only successful government program that's ever existed?
It is the cornerstone of the whole program. Is to confiscate the children, reprogram them, obedience to the state, obedience to the corporate culture, and there you have it. That infects every other institution, every other area of government politics.
That explains The Simpsons.
Yeah. Any other questions? Dave?
Jason, the one thing you had up there kind of made it seem like what they're trying to do is, and let me know if I'm right or wrong on this,
Sure.
as the children are going through school, more or less like track them and figure out what they are capable of achieving in their life, and then forcing them in that direction in terms of employment and everything. Is that what they're trying to do?
I mean, ultimately, the best case scenario, that's exactly the best case scenario of what they would want this to be. That is to produce the human resources, like I had said in the first slide. That's like the best positive way to spin this is, sure, we're gonna help people learn about what they're good at, and we're gonna help them get into that track and follow that. Well, actually, the entire operation is taking people in a real small, narrow band, and it leaves out a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm sure you guys all know somebody who you went to school with or are in school now, and they have problems. They're rebelling, they're having behavioral issues, they're having whatever. A lot of that is a rejection of that obedience program, obedience to the state, obedience to the system. It's one thing to be obedient to your parents and your community, your faith community, your family, people who love you, people who have relationships with you, and it's quite another thing to be obedient to a nameless, faceless bureaucracy. And that's basically what they want, is human resources. They want someone who's smart enough to run the knobs and switches, but not smart enough to question why they're still in that job. So, Scott.
Just, from some of the stuff that I've been looking into about this, and when you really kind of look at the backgrounds of some of the people that are involved with this, and Bill Gates is a gigantic proponent of this, throws a ton of money at it. People are eugenicists. And this is educational eugenics.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely
This
right.
is educational eugenics. They're going to create two classes of people. They're going to create a class of worker drones, and then they're going to have elites that are going to run it. And based upon what I've what do you think about that? Am I right?
You're absolutely right. I only had a half hour, but if I had started about 30 years earlier, I could have gotten into the eugenics stuff. I started about 1890s, 1900 in this presentation, but if you start 1871, you will see the book that started the eugenics movement, Charles Darwin, Descent of Man. This is a book that basically discusses social evolution. And his cousin, Francis Galton, was the original eugenics guy. And these guys ran in a certain elite circle in Europe, in England especially. And that aristocracy in Europe kind of infected, ideologically, philosophically infected our leading politicians and wealthy industrialists. They kind of had this idea, and that's where progressivism comes from, is social evolution. And the idea is that 5% of the cream of the crop, the folks who go to the elite private boarding schools, those folks are the enlightened ones, the ones who could manage the rest of us. The rest of us are genetic garbage. And that's literally what they said. So, sorry.
and there's a big problem with foundations, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Gates Foundation. All these trillionaires are getting out of paying any taxes because they put their money in foundations. And when they do take a loss, it's a loss to these programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the foundations, something's got to be done about them. I mean, the sports players have good foundations, give foundations a good name, you know, Ray Lewis and all that, and everything's good, nothing's nefarious there. But then they use that for the trillionaires, the Warren Buffetts, the Rockefellers, the Gates, to use their foundations to lay taxes on us while they go tax-free with all their riches.
Yep. Yeah, they're all nonprofits. All these foundations I mentioned are nonprofits, and they all seek to use government to hamper us from competing with them. They don't want us to accrue wealth, compete, build businesses, and land and compete with them. So it's one of the ways they could, sir.
I can understand why a century ago, when we had a manufacturing-based economy, why a model like this might be desired. Why today, when so much of our manufacturing has been outsourced to other countries, what do they intend to do with all these less than fully educated children? What jobs exactly are they going to be doing?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked that. I looked up the Bureau of Labor Statistics, top 10 jobs for the upcoming few years, 5 to 10 years, 20 years. There was one that required college education. Out of 10 jobs, they were the most populous jobs coming up in the economy. That was a nurse. So the vast majority of jobs that we're preparing our young people for don't even require a college education. So the ruse that they're using is, we want to get people college career ready, and that really is, it's service industry. It's all service industry type jobs. It's not manufacturing anymore, like you said. In the 40s, it was 75-25 service product. It's totally flipped. Now it's 75 service, 25 manufacturing. Product-based economy. So even more so, they want now us not to compete with them. So, Scott.
Wasn't like the point of a lot of this too is just conditioning, right? They're conditioning these children to obey. They're conditioning these children to be controlled, so that they believe certain things, so that when they are told by their government or by whatever authority figure of the day is, they will believe it without question.
Right. And I want to make it clear, if I hadn't already, it's not about the content. Although there is worldview bias in there, it's not like they're telling these kids X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter if they ever said anything to them. It's the mechanism by which these kids go through an inhumane factory, basically. All the different mechanisms of control, which it would take forever to get into here, but it's the content is bad, but it's not the main thing. It's the system itself. People should be free to learn, and like they had before the past 100 years. So.
Can I just add to that, because of what this gentleman said about, you can understand why 100 years ago or whatever it might have seemed reasonable to do this. Never by the government. In America, it is never the role of our government to decide who's going to do what.
Especially central government. Especially the most largest government. If it's got to be government, which I'm not for, but if it's got to be government, it should be the very most local government you can get. The school, if not possible the school, then the school district or the county. But beyond that, you really just get into a sea of bureaucracy and wasted money and hurting kids and all kinds of stuff like that.
I just wanted to add to that, what you were saying regarding the conditioning. It was interesting, my youngest is 13, and I had a conversation with her regarding, the whole Pop-Tart gun and all that, just saying, whatever you do, don't talk about it, don't mention it. And she goes, wait a minute, Mom, haven't you figured it out? They're not targeting my age group. They're targeting the little ones. And this is coming from my 13-year-old who's going, it's the real little ones. They're conditioning them now that guns are a bad thing. It's too late, they must think, for the 13-year-olds to realize guns are a horrible thing. So they're conditioning them much younger.
Yeah. It's a cultural war, really, is what it is.
Well, last month, for anyone that was here, you saw that videotape of Eric Holder saying we need to use the school system to brainwash our children to believe that gun ownership, gun use, and the exercise of your Second Amendment rights is abnormal. Out of his mouth, on videotape, you know. I mean, so if we let these people talk long enough, they tell us what they're about. That's actually not what I wanted to say. Now I forget what I wanted.
I thank you guys a lot for having me. I apologize. I'm going to have to run out of here. I have to go to a business trip down to North Carolina tonight. I got to get there tonight. So I appreciate you guys coming out. And thanks a lot.
You have to be in North Carolina tonight?
Yep. Well, tomorrow morning by 9 o'clock.
Okay. We don't want to know how fast you're going to drive. Yeah, let's give, before he leaves the room, let's give him another round of applause. As you can tell, there's 1,000 things wrong that he hasn't time to talk about, but I really appreciate everybody's questions because it brought out those kind of things. So anyway, at this point, I would like to, before we do this, Sharon, where's Sharon? Okay, Sharon has a couple words for us. Welcome, Sharon Bean.
I am Sharon Bean, for those of you who do not know me. I wanted to take this opportunity this evening to say thank you. Thank you for all who participated in our Chicks and Gun fundraiser at the Horse McCann Range and standing up for the Second Amendment. Yeah. And thanks to all of you, it was a huge success. We sold every ticket, everyone had a great time. We learned a lot about firearm safety, and we had target practice. And I know I learned I need practice. Also, the raffle for the ladies' handgun, we sold every ticket for that as well. And congratulations to Mary Bell for winning that gun.
Carolyn Bell.
So again, thank you. So again, thank you on behalf of the steering committee for Campaign for Liberty and Maryland Liberty PAC. And I would like to say one more thing to all of you this evening. We need each and every one of you to commit to stand with us and support us in all these efforts. Because we all have the same goals, and that's to fight for and protect our liberties and freedoms for ourselves. And our children, and our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. So we need each and every one of you to commit to stand with us. Because we can make a difference. And we have made a difference. We are making a difference. And we will make a difference. But we depend on all of you. And why? Because you are Campaign for Liberty. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. And it really is true. Everyone that you ever see up here or ever know that's affiliated with Campaign for Liberty does not want to be the only people doing these things. we want a committee of hundreds and hundreds. So we solicit your support, we welcome your support. That wasn't really a planned segue, but while we're here, this is the time we're getting ready to do open mic, which is one of my favorite times in the meeting. But as you may or may not know, this room costs us $250 every time we're here. It's a little lighter crowd, but it's a really great crowd. You should give yourself a hand. It's July, and we have a really good crowd. That's really, really awesome. But it's a little lighter than normal, so we asked you to be generous as you help us out for all the phone calling and mailing and these meetings and all the things that we do. No one here takes a salary, no one takes a dime out of it. We're all here because we keep putting money into it. And we appreciate and solicit your support for doing the same thing. So Scott is going to hand out, and Dave's going to hand out, and I'm going to start one right here because I see people with all kinds of money in their hands. If you want, just throw your whole wallet in. We'll give you the remainder later. At this time, it's time for open mic. And I'm going to ask Bob Phillips to come up first. And Dan Galuzzo, you're on deck. Al Smith, you're in the hole. Bob Phillips.
We already got it.
Let's give a hand to Bob Phillips.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to let you guys know what Oath Keepers is doing nationally and locally here in Maryland. Recently, I've become was named the Vice President of Oath Keepers in Maryland, which was a great honor because Bob Shirley does amazing work as President of Oath Keepers in Maryland. We're putting billboards up. We're targeting areas, military bases, things like that. Here in Maryland, what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise some money. We've got a location on Route 70. There's already billboards up. Mother Jones covered it. It's been on several websites in the DC Metro, which Oath Keepers National has done. So if anybody could make any contributions, I hate asking for donations, money, anything. If you've got $1, anything, it's going to add up. We're only about $350 away from putting one on Route 70. We'd also like to put one up near Fort Meade. So,
tell them what it says.
It's in support. I can show you the picture if you like, but I don't have the ability to bring it up on that. Yeah, I think I can. Do you have another connection?
Are we going to bring this up on the fly?
Yes, he's going to. What's your email?
Can you just hold that thought for a second? And we're going to let Joe talk about the barbecue bash while you're bringing that up. Joe, can you do the barbecue bash right now?
Hello guys, August 9th, August 10th is the Bel Air Barbecue Bash, the biggest food festival in our county. Hartford Campaign for Liberty will have a table there. We're going to be there from Friday, August 9th from 4 to 10 p.m. and Saturday, August 10th from noon to 10 p.m. Please come out and talk to us. We'd love to see you out there. And if anyone would like to volunteer for half an hour to sit with us, to talk to people, please see me after the meeting. Love to have you guys out there. All right, guys, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah. Do you have it up there? Look at this guy. Oh my gosh, you're awesome.
This is going up on Route 70. That's already up in the DC Metro. Yep. Basically, we're trying to get people to understand, the NSA, it is spying on you. And Oath Keeper's position is it's a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights.
That's right.
It's a violation to your privacy. It's a violation to your Fourth Amendment. I mean, these are things that, as an Oath Keeper, I've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution and to defend the Constitution. So, this is the billboard that we've got up right now, and thank you, Mike. If anybody can contribute, if it's $1, $5, anything, please let me know. All right, thank you.
The biggest donor was $60 so far tonight. So if anybody
That was this guy right here.
No, shut up. If anybody does $60 or more, I'll buy them a drink. Okay? Let me know, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Dan Galuzzo, Al Smith, you're on deck, and Dave Pridgeon, you're in the hole. You're not in the hole anymore. You're out of the hole.
Give me 4.
Okay.
Hello, how are you? Thank you very much. 1964, I just got out of cryptography school at the National Security Agency, and I was brought into a room with 34 people. They waited for the Central Intelligence Agency to bring very large, I'm your whistleblower tonight, by the way, to bring very large duffel bags full of ticker tape from New York. In those days, there was no satellite. There were no computers. What they did, every time you sent a telegram overseas or one came in, it all went through RCA Victor in New York. Everything settled there. And it came out on ticker tapes. The CIA every day would pick up anywhere from 12 to as many as, I saw 30 one time, very large duffel bags full of ticker tapes, and this room full of women and men would be looking at the tapes and looking for keywords or groups of words or letters that were in cryptography or cryptographic form. And they would put them in different baskets, and they had a book. So if they saw something that said embassy or a particular country, after I left NSA, I couldn't travel to 23 nations for 10 years. I was a field operative for a national security agency. They were spying on everybody then. That was 1964. 49 years later, I have the courage enough to tell you that my top secret code word clearance is no longer effective, and I'm not whistleblowing, I'm saying this is not new. I don't consider Snowden to be an evil person or a hero. I think he did something that someone should do. Now let me tell you what's happening to you. I'm going to give you most definitely. The complex that they're building in Utah will be able to monitor every cell phone, every email, every text, every communication on the earth, constantly. I don't know if you can imagine how big that is. Everyone will be monitored. Now what happens is, you have patterns. You have patterns in how you pay your bills, where you walk, where you get food. You have patterns every day. And when you go and write out a check, or you do a money order and you send it off to someone, that gets recorded and it also goes into the system. They can pull up Social Security numbers and see where you're going every day, every month, every year, and see your habit patterns. Now here's my question. Why?
When you break the habit.
Are they doing this to send you a birthday present? Or a Christmas card?
It's recently also been announced that they have the license plate scanners. They're scanning everywhere that you're going.
Oh yeah.
And that's all supposed to.
Oh yeah. So now, we just had two wonderful people tell us about different things, especially Common Core. And so he's telling us, and we know from government now, that they have some kind of intention, and it's not very good. They're telling us also, especially with Common Core, that they're going to hurt our children or our grandchildren. Okay, someone comes to your door and says, I'm going to hurt your grandchild. Are you going to say, well, come on in, let's talk about it? I've reached a point in my life. I'm 71 years old. I've seen a lot of different things. You're patriots, and I absolutely adore all of you, and I appreciate the time you let me share a few of my moments. I wish I had more time with you. I know how constrained we are. I reached that point in my life where I said, I would love to see things happen in a nonviolent way. I would love for them to look at Gandhi and see what he did in taking a very large country in a more peaceful manner. There's a lot of violence there, don't misunderstand. There was a lot of violence in India when it came over. I would love to see us take over peacefully. But what happens to our representatives when they get elected? Somehow or another they inject their brain with some sort of stupidity and they go up there and vote exactly opposite of what we want. And what do? We sit home, go shopping, watch the Ravens, tell us that we're number one and we're home. Or we buy guns and we feel we're protected. It's not that simple anymore. And I come to you to say this. Watch yourself. Get enough supplies for 1 to 3 months in your houses, especially medicines and water. The government can turn off your phone any given time they want. Snowden's not a traitor. He did what had to be done. You should see what's going on. It's terrible. You know what it is because you're patriots. The other ones, they're just happy to go to Walmart. And I hope, by the way, last month I asked you not to buy at Walmart. I hope you did do that. You know, we should do something. But what are we going to do? We're going to wait until they come and take us over? They're doing it now. You don't eat an elephant all at once. You eat it a little piece at a time. And that's what they're doing. I honestly believe, and I humbly submit to you, this may be my last open mic. I would love to see it taken over by a democratic process. The principle that I have in my mind is citizen representatives elected by merit under term limits who promise to uphold the Constitution and defend it, who swear they will not cheat on their spouses, who swear they will not profit by their position, who do their work and go home.
That's right.
certain we can get that easily. I pray to God that we can. But if not, what can we do?
Read a
We're
Bible.
going to give up? I will not give up. I will give my life for my country. And God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. Al, real quickly, Al. Oh, there you are.
Got the oil can.
Dave, you're on deck. Got the okay.
How you doing? I don't know if you realize or know about Delaware, Sussex County elected to take away the arrest powers of their county sheriff, which was duly elected by the people. Delaware state's attorney happens to be Bo Biden. I thought I heard on the news that there's another Biden going to be running for state's attorney in this state. But maybe I misunderstood that. But anyhow, beware. The police state is coming. Which brings me to a couple of years ago, I heard a statement that there's no state in the union that has a active militia. Everybody thinks that the National Guard is a militia, but that's not right, because the paychecks come from the National Treasury and the officers are appointed by the Congress. So any governor thinks he's the commander-in-chief of the National Guard is an idiot. But I'm going to put the fire to the feet of the people running for governor this time around. And I'm going to pose the question, if you're elected governor, will you reactivate the Maryland militia? And that's what we need to do, because what we have, the same thing is happening in D.C. that Mussolini did. He took the Italian Constitution and he ignored it. And that's exactly what's happening here now. And you have U.S. attorneys who are appointed by the president, and they're expecting them to enforce the lawbreaker. We have the same problem in Anne Arundel County. We had a guy who elected the chief law enforcement officer there, and when he got in trouble, he wound up having to resign too, because he wouldn't enforce the law. So basically, what's happening is they're trying to do away with your county sheriff. And when you do that, you're going to have a police state, and it doesn't matter what else you do, because they're going to come get you. So I would recommend that you put the feet to everybody's fire. And our oath keepers, gentlemen, that's one question I ask anybody in law enforcement or who is going for that. I said, do you know who oath keepers are? Or better yet, ask them if they're a member of Oath Keepers, and then ask them. Yes, sir.
Another great organization is Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Organization.
Oh, yeah. Sheriff Max operation, yeah.
Here a couple months ago.
Yeah. The Constitutional Peace Officers Association, that's they're actually training the sheriffs and telling them or educating them on what their constitutional duties are. Not just in, getting the burglar and the bad guy, but recognizing unlawful laws and not enforcing them. And that's what we need. We need to get a new militia, or we need to get a militia so we can enforce the laws when the ones who are supposed to enforce the laws aren't doing it. Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks, Dan.
Any questions?
Okay, I hope I'm not going to step on Christina's toes on this, because she's going to speak on the NSA really shortly here. But I wanted to make you aware that tomorrow or the next day is scheduled a vote on amendments to the fiscal year 2014 Defense Appropriation Bill. And one of those amendments is going to be the Liberty Act. And that would prohibit the National Security Agency from collecting telephone and email metadata from American citizens who are not under investigation. Now, just to put this in context, since the Patriot Act was passed, there has been exactly 1 hour of debate on all the renewals of the Patriot Act since it was passed. 1 hour in the Senate, and that's been it over all these years. So Representative Justin Amash, a Republican from Michigan, introduced the amendment in an effort to curtail the agency's controversial data collection activities. It would limit the NSA's ability to twist the language of Section 215 of the Patriot Act to pretend it means it's okay to collect information on every phone call made in our country. If y'all want to know just how important this amendment is, NSA boss General Keith Alexander today scheduled an emergency meeting before Congress to tell them not to vote for the Amash Amendment. NSA head Alexander held a members-only briefing in response to the amendment, according to an invitation distributed to members of Congress this morning and forwarded to the Huffington Post. Quote, in advance of anticipated action on amendments to the DoD appropriations bill, Ranking Member Dutch Ruppersberger of the House Intelligence Committee invites your member to attend a question and answer session with General Alexander of the National Security Agency, unquote, reads the invitation. The invitation warned members that they could not share what they learned with their constituents. Quote, the briefing will be held at the top secret /SCI level and be strictly members only, unquote, reads the invite. Of course, the people that Congress is supposed to be representing, the citizens, don't get the privilege of being able to secure a last-minute briefing with our elected officials to explain to them why the Amash Amendment is important. So what we're doing right now is we're handing out a paper, and I want you all to email tonight and tomorrow Congressman Harris's office, okay? Now, this isn't just any email address you're getting, okay? It's not a staffer going to get this email and they're going to do with it whatever. I am giving you the email directly to the smartphone of his chief of staff and his deputy chief of staff, so tomorrow morning Congressman Harris understands that there's citizens in Harford County who are against this surveillance of us that is going on. Thank you.
Leave that up for a minute if you don't mind. Can everybody read that? Kevin.REIGNGRUT?
Passing it out.
Okay, everybody's got it. Okay, good.
What's the email? Don't blackmail me, but
Yeah, don't spot me, bro.
It's pronounced like rugrat.
Oh.
Hey, that's good.
Someone had their hand up? Okay, let me tell you, this is not a very small matter.
We're asking them to support the Amash Amendment. That's A-M-A-S-H, Amash.
Yeah, Justin, Amash, it's like a mash, okay? The Amash Amendment, okay? Oh, thank you, look at you. You're awesome. And as I believe Dan referenced, we send people to Congress and they become infected with the whatever is in D.C. or they become, well, I'm not saying this is happening to any one particular person, but you know when the NSA gathers 100% of the data about lawmakers, judges, politicians, law enforcement people, and then they go to Washington and then they become a completely different person, what are you to make of that?
blackmail.
What are you to make of that? And I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm telling you, most of us in this room work for Andy Harris to go to Congress. Andy Harris has consistently voted for the Patriot Act and its renewals. He's voted to extend warrantless roving wire wiretaps. He's voted for CISPA, the bill that would allow your private emails to be shared with the government, although they're already doing it anyway. He voted for H.R. 347, the law that can outlaw free speech near anyone protected by the Secret Service. He voted for H.R. 658, which allows the use of government spy drones. Who is this guy that we worked for to send to Congress?
We will do it again.
We will do it again.
He told us before he left exactly what kind of legislator he would be, and he is doing that. He's unconstitutional. We must force all of our even so-called liberty candidates to be talking how constitutional principles apply to the issues they're going to govern, because otherwise they're not fit.
That's right.
We can't hope they will make
He's got to be primaried. You can't send somebody to Congress and think it's over. It's not over. You haven't done your job, even if they sound great. Anyway, stay tuned for a way that you can make your voice heard on that regard as well.
Try them and execute them.
So anyway, please, if you do nothing else, if you have to do it on your iPhone after we end this meeting, just send an email to these guys and say, we know the kind of votes that Congressman Harris has been doing. He must vote for the Amash Amendment to end this NSA spying and defend the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. Anyway.
And Lowell to say, it's not his first job to protect us.
That's right.
His first job is to keep us free.
That's right. That's right.
Taking congressmen are the terrorists.
I know, seriously.
NSA, IRS is the terrorist.
TSA, I know, exactly.
IRS is the terrorist.
That's right. All right, we have, Vicki's going to share with us some things about the rain tax. Yes, when you live in Maryland, they'll figure out how to tax anything they can. Rain tax information from Vicki. Give her a hand.
Okay, well, this won't be nearly as sexy as the NSA. It's kind of local, it's kind of dry, but I think it's something that we're all interested in. Just to let you know, for folks who maybe weren't here last month, the RAIN Task Force, do you have the PowerPoint? The RAIN Task Force was put together by the County Council at their last legislative session before they went on break. And essentially what the task force is tasked with is how to extract the funds from the taxpayers of Harford County to meet the requirements of House Bill 987, which is the mandate, the stormwater tax mandate that was passed in 2013. The first meeting of this task force was on July the 9th. It was 8 o'clock in the morning at some dingy little government building office, and I went. And I'd like to let you know what I found out. Do you have the second slide? What we're going to be bringing up in a second is the second slide of the PowerPoint, and you're going to be seeing the names of all the different people that were appointed to the task force and who appointed them, and there we go. We have people appointed by the County Council and the County Executive, and you can take a look at that. There's just a couple folks I want to point out. John Gesner, an attorney appointed by Bill Boniface. Prior to the end of the evening, he basically said that, or before the end of the meeting, he said he would happily serve as chairperson for this committee. So he will be the chairperson of the committee, directing the committee. And he seemed to be a pretty straightforward, down to business, no nonsense, I want to get things done kind of guy. Kevin Swalls, the Director of Planning in Bel Air, appointed by McMahon. Doug Miller, City Manager in Aberdeen, appointed by Slutsky. Interesting that these two people were appointed, the basically city planners for two municipalities that will not be affected by the rain tax. I can't say it was a bad thing, you know, I mean, Slutsky and McMahon are looking out for the best interests of their constituents, but still, these people are going to be having input into a policy that will not affect the counties that they manage. Mr. Rickey, the president of the Harford County Farm Bureau, and The one I really want to point out is Heather Cesar, appointed by Mary Ann Lasanti. She will probably be the most agenda-driven member of this group. She's the Baltimore District point of contact for the Chesapeake Bay program, which is essentially an EPA-run regional planning organization that works to improve the Bay. And then Mr. Whitty from the Department of Public Works, Christine Buckley also from the Department of Public Works, they were appointed by the county executive. Next slide. So what will they do? Well, they were appointed by the county council to look at innovative ways that they can finance this mandate, but really, let's be honest, they're going to devise a wealth redistribution scheme, a tax, to meet the requirements of the bill. And let's just be honest, that's what it is. Not through any fault of their own. These are nice people, hardworking private citizens that have been pressed into uncomfortable service. They're doing what's asked of them, but essentially they're devising a wealth redistribution. Your wealth is being redistributed. They're also going to be providing cover for the county council. When whatever method is adopted, if it's adopted by the county council and we're screaming bloody murder, we're not happy, what are you going to do about it? Well, we appointed a blue ribbon panel and this is what they recommended. So they're there to give cover to the county council and the county executive. They'll also be basing their decisions on cost estimates provided by the Department of Public Works, and that's really important. That's really important. We're going to get to that in a second. Now, those cost estimates, at this meeting, the Department of Public Works had a very nice PowerPoint that they went through how they came up with their cost estimates. Well, the bill mandates that there has to be a 20% treatment of impervious cover over the next 5 years. So they figure out how much is 20%, how much impervious cover do we have in Harford County. Well, we have 12,000 acres. I'm assuming that's minus the state and local government lands that are not included in this tax. 20% of 12,000 is 2,400. And the average restoration cost per acre, we're going to figure, well, I'll tell you how we got that in a second, $60,000 per acre. Well, that comes to a grand total of $144 million, $28.8 million. I mean, this is coin out of your pocket. All right, we're not talking little numbers, we're talking big numbers. One thing that jumped out at me immediately is that no specific project was offered. Nobody said we want to do 10 bioswales, 20 bioretention ponds, we want to plant 150 acres of trees and switchgrass. No specific projects were offered, and so how can we say that it's going to cost this much if we don't even know what we're doing? Next slide. So how do we come up with the $60,000? Well, the $60,000 isn't what Harford County Department of Public Works came up with. The $60,000 is a number that was extracted from a report called the King and Hagen Report. Cost of stormwater practices in Maryland counties. It was the final draft was released in October of 2011. Interesting that in May of 2012 is when we got our stormwater tax bill, HB 987. So this was in the works, people. The fix was in before we even knew about it. This report was written by the Maryland Center for Environmental Science, not known to be, from what I've seen, not known to rely always on pure science, purely unbiased science. It was commissioned by the Maryland Department of the Environment in order to come up with the numbers that they recommended, the costs per county that they recommended. They interviewed experts all over Maryland. In the report, they admit that their cost estimates are wildly variable from one county to the next, as you can imagine. Costs for rural counties versus agricultural or versus urban counties, the kind of soil you have in your area, the kind of construction that's going on in your area, what kind of development, where, how densely your population is packed. All these things come into effect. So, to say that the cost for Harford County will be similar to the costs in Baltimore City, you just cannot make those stretches. And again, they're working with estimates. They're not working with hard figures.
So who were these experts that they went to so they could come up with this $60,000 per acre figure? Well, they talked to some folks in the counties, and you can see which counties they talked to. Harford County, missing in action. Not a single individual in Harford County, in the Department of Public Works or in the in the Stormwater Management Division, no one from Harford County was interviewed or queried about stormwater management practices and the costs of them in Harford County. That'll be important. Wait until we get to the last slide. You're like, your brains out. Can we go back one more? Organizations, and just in Frederick County, the person they talked to from Frederick County, Shannon Moore, she's the director of the Sustainability Office. By now, when you guys hear the word sustainability, you should be having a certain reaction. And then in Howard County, the person they talked to is Mr. Saltzman. He is a member of SWAM, Stormwater Association of Maryland. Their job is basically to see to it that government mandates are achieved. They don't question. They're those worker drones that Mr. Laird was talking about. Just don't ask. The organizations, Bay Savers American Rivers, you can read it. The EPA, our good friends from the EPA. The Clean Chesapeake Coalition, anybody remember Mr. McLeod? He was here a couple months ago, talked about, reasonable environmental initiatives that are fiscally responsible as well. They didn't want to talk to him. No, they wanted to talk to people affiliated with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Next slide. Well, there were 26 organizations altogether. I couldn't look at all of them, but I looked at a few. Chesapeake Stormwater Network, I checked them out first because they got a big shout out from the folks on King and Hagen. You can read their mission statement. They're all into permits, regulations, design manuals, and there's that word again, folks, sustainable. Sustainable stormwater management. When you look at their website, there's nothing about sound science, fiscal responsibility, property rights. There's none of that. It's all about earth first, earth first, earth first. This is our priority. Who are the folks that are involved with stormwater? Jay Sherman. He's the president. He's been involved with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. He's worked for them. He's worked for the World Wildlife Fund. That's an NGO of the UN. So this guy's been in the environmental movement for a long, long time. He definitely has an agenda. Tom Schul, and he should. I mean, there's no reason it's not wrong to be interested in environmental stewardship, but he's coming from a background that I have found in my investigations to be quite radical. Tom Schuler, executive director of the network. He's been with Watershed Protection. He works for the EPA. He's with the Chesapeake Bay program. Next slide. Chesapeake Bay program. Who works for the Chesapeake Bay program? Our good friend Heather Cesar, appointed to the committee by Marianne Lasanti. Well, she works for the Chesapeake Bay program, which is a regional partnership that's essentially led by the EPA. You can go to their website, you can see a lot of stuff, but there was one thing that really struck me. They're really into elementary and secondary education and environmental education of children. So coming up with programs that are environmentally formulated to teach children about the environment and environmental stewardship. Well, one of their goals is to set forth a series of steps to reverse, and you'll see, a nature deficit disorder. So if Earth First is not your main consideration, your children, if you and your children probably have a psychological disorder. It's called nature deficit disorder. Perhaps they'll come up with a treatment for it. Next slide. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, nature deficit disorder. You have a mental illness if you're not willing to reach into your pocket and hand over every last penny you have to the EPA. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We'll have to take all your guns now.
We'll have to take your guns. Well, that's coming too. The EPA, we could go on and on about the EPA, but from the King and Hagen report, I pulled a series of comments they had from the EPA. The EPA's position on the rain tax, they think that the rain tax is a great way of funding stormwater remediation. Why? Because it's equitable. It's based on user contribution to runoff. Well, it's really not. The state's not involved, local government's not involved. In some counties, for instance in Harford County, if I live in a tiny little townhouse with a tiny little roof and no driveway, I pay the same as somebody who has a huge property. It's stable. This is the one that really got me. Why is it stable? Because it's not dependent on political whims or the budget process, which means that you, the citizen, will not have recourse against you, recourse with your elected officials for this. And then adequate, because the funds are typically less than taxpayers are willing to pay. I don't know where they came up with that. They obviously haven't been to our meetings. By the way, in terms of that, Heather Cesar asked, I was there with a couple other citizens, Heather Cesar asked the people from the Department of Public Works what the citizens were saying about the rain tax. And I was like, we're here, ask us. Next slide, please. Now, here's what I want you to know. That $60,000 figure that we talked about a few minutes ago, this is what the experts came up with, and this is what the King and Hagen report is recommending. Well, prior to the King and Hagen report, the Department of Public Works was using an estimate of $30,000 per acre. Basically, the King and Hagen report doubles the expenditure for this stormwater remediation. And those numbers do not include any administrative costs. So we know that anytime the government passes a law, it loads government more, I know, I see it, more. The bureaucratic requirements of this stormwater remediation will add exponentially to this. So next slide, please. So what do? Well, we need to find out, and I don't think we wait until November when this task force goes to the county council and says, this is what we have to say. We go to our county council members now, and we say, you got to keep an eye on what's going on. By the way, Chad Schroeds was the only person that sent somebody to that meeting, his guy, Johnny White. Why is there such a big discrepancy between $30,000 and $60,000? Why is the county going with one value and not another? Are there any specific projects planned? How can you say how much this is going to cost when you haven't yet recommended or suggested a single project? How much pollution does Harford County contribute to the Bay? How is it measured? From my studies, none of it is measured. There are no studies. It's all modeled. It's all speculation. And is the county council or is the task force willing to consider what something like they did in Frederick County, where they charged everybody a penny and the money is coming out of general funds? So I gotta go. I'm 3 minutes over my time. Hopefully next month I'll have something more.
All right, NSA, Christina. Let's give her a hand.
Okay, so on to the sexy part, Vicki says. Back to the NSA. Don't mind at all that we went over some things already with Dave and Mr. Caluso. I appreciate that, actually. But Jerry, if you get bored in the back, you just go like this, and I'll speed it up a little bit, okay?
Into the mic. It's all I ask you to do is I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
All right, great. All right. Well, we went over a little bit last month with Dave Pridgeon about Edward Snowden's revelation at the NSA program called PRISM. If everyone remembers, Dave gave us a little bit about the, not yet, Mike, please, about the violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. The ACLU currently has has filed against NSA over the freedom of speech, or violation of our freedom of speech, right to privacy, our freedom of association, and our rights to due process. We give you a little recap. The NSA was tapping into and is still tapping into private communication systems like Yahoo, Outlook, Skype, Google, Facebook, AOL, Verizon, and others. And they actually have been doing this since 2007. Little bits and pieces were coming out before Snowden hit Hong Kong, but it wasn't really hitting the mainstream media. So You know, I've heard a lot of people say, including a couple people in this room, that they will never use Facebook, that they'll never get on Facebook because people can find you too easily on Facebook. There's too much information on Facebook. So I want to give a gauge right now of like how many people actually have Facebook accounts. If you raise your hand if you have a Facebook account, okay? All right, now keep your hands up. All right, now how many of you that don't have your hands up, raise your hand if you have an email address. All right, a couple of people still don't have their hands up. All right, and how many of you have a cell phone? Okay, so I think we've hit just about everybody in the room has one or more of these forms of communication. So congratulations, we all have a file in the NSA system, okay? Every single one of us. And then what I hear most people say after that is, so what? What should it matter to me, right? I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't rob, steal, or cheat. I pay my taxes, I go to work, I mind my own business. But folks, you seem to forget that you are at a Campaign for Liberty meeting. And therefore, you are guilty by association. We just went through the big IRS scandal, and that IRS scandal proved to everyone in the country that conservative and political patriotic groups were being targeted. They were being targeted unnecessarily. We're not quite sure yet why, although I'm sure everyone can conjecture in this room. But they were being targeted, they were being harassed, and they were being treated like criminals and made to undergo additional reviews. 2 years ago, if you guys will recall, the Department of Justice also put out warning signs for law enforcement to recognize the characteristics of a terrorist. If you recall those, a terrorist might be someone who collects guns, someone who has a lot of ammunition stored up, someone who has 7 or more days worth of food in your pantry. And some of you ladies will look in your pantries tonight. I find that most of us do, because we don't like to be without our food. Someone with anti-government views. Anybody? Someone with someone with extra flashlights stored up. Yes, flashlights. Just about any one of us. Oh, he likes flashlights. Just about any one of us, I think, would fit into one or more of these categories as well. Ron Paul stickers, exactly. So when people say, "So what? I haven't done anything." So what if I have an NSA file? Just remember, it doesn't always matter. Sometimes they will target you for no better reason than they've decided at this point to target you. Now the NSA, I think Mike brought up the picture earlier, is collecting all of this information in huge warehouses. The latest warehouse in Utah, I think, cost $1.4 billion, if I'm remembering that correctly. And that's where they're housing all of this information called metadata. And eventually they'll be able to go through this metadata quicker and quicker and quicker so that they can, at a moment's notice, they can pull up these words, these word groups, and find the information that they're looking for. Right now, they're just calling it sucking up the haystack, but eventually they'll be able to find those needles that they're looking for in the haystacks. Now, right now, you're not supposed to be concerned because it's not a phone conversation, it's just metadata, which is basically what they say It's the number that it was dialed from, the number that was dialed to, the date that the phone number was dialed, the length of time that you spoke, and then the location, because you know your GPS tracks everything on your cell phone, your email, what have you. So this is why the secret courts that we're not allowed to know about or know why, you know, they're allowed to collect this information. This is why these secret courts say it's okay, because it's not an actual phone conversation. It's just little particles of metadata. But we have a website here that Mike can pull up. It was a German politician who found out that his telephone company was also collecting metadata over in Germany on him and all of their customers. And his name was Malt Spitz. He sued for the information that the telephone company was collecting, and he took that information and he actually made an interactive website with it, and he made it public so that people could see exactly what this metadata would provide to the right person who was looking at the information. And what you're seeing right now is all of that information actually compiled so that they know where he is at any point in time, they know how long he stayed there, they know who he spoke to, they can look at his Facebook or his blogs and find out what he was doing there under most circumstances, if he went to a birthday party, if he had legislative duties there. It's a pretty complete record that's in that metadata. It's not anything to mess with, I guess. Mr. Glizzo?
The various colors there designate what he's doing. Buying gas, buying food, making a cash transfer. So it really gets down into following his every movement.
I did not know about the colors.
What's the website?
That's a good question. If you Google German politician metadata, you'll find it, and you can play with it down at the bottom. You can go down to the different days and see all of the different, yes.
I just wanted to key on something. You're talking about the metadata, but Project Echelon, if you say certain keywords, they will record the conversation. That's been going on for some time, and supposedly Echelon is an old thing that's been replaced. But if you said, you know, keywords like bomb or you know, anything that you said, it could be anti-government. I mean, there's a lot of different things. And it's been documented in a number of really good books by James Bamford. He wrote Body of Secrets, which is the secret history of the NSA, and a lot of people that were contractors for the NSA were up in arms over it. And he wrote The Shadow Factory, which is also about the NSA. Phenomenal books that will give you a wealth of knowledge to how deep.
And do they claim that they're erasing these phone conversations afterwards, or they don't make any claims?
They don't make any claims.
Yes, Scott.
But that data center that they're building in Utah
yes.
is as big as 6 Pentagons.
Right.
And it will hold 100 years of all data, not
correct.
Just metadata, but all data.
Right.
And they only have to have, an analyst only has to have a 51% probability to put you on target list. And all it takes is an analyst to go and recommend that a phone call be listened to. So
yes, they pretty much have carte blanche to pick any one person and target that person and pull up all of this data at once. And they will be able to pull up the last 20, 30 years of your movements. And then eventually your phone conversations as well. And considering the fact that right now we have 850,000 contractors that are doing this for the NSA, that's not a small amount of people that are being hired to do this as well.
And who's paying for it?
Well, I believe that you're paying for it. Yes, since we know that foundations don't pay for it.
The most horrible thing about all this is that we're giving information 20 years old. So they're already, you know what I mean? We don't know everything like they want to know everything. We're so far in the past in this.
We may be. But as we watch this, you know, there's a rhetorical question that kind of sinks into the back of my mind, and I think it was brought up earlier too. It's not just the little people, so to speak, that they're collecting data on. This goes into our politicians as well. This is everyone that they're collecting data on. So if you have an NSA that's run by high-profile private contractors, and 99% of those people came from the military field, and they're of a mindset to say, we're going to get whatever we want whenever we want it. Our directive is ABC, and if you stand in our way, we're going to make sure that you get out of our way. What's the easiest way to get someone out of your way? Well, that's to find some way to blackmail them. It's to find some sort of information on them and make a well-placed phone call and get that person out of your way. So, you know, the next time you think of, you hear an affair that's going on with some, you know, general who has to leave his position, or, you know, someone has a, you know, a leakage of pictures or what have you, you know, it's not always, oops, it was a coincidence. You know, there may be something else going on behind it that we just don't know about. And this may very well be the key. You know, if you make a call from the Ritz-Carlton, who's to say that somebody else isn't, you know, watching that as well? But I digress. There's no way really to prove that. But since the Snowden scandal, more information has come to light, which really hasn't hit a lot of the mainstream media. And it affects not only us as Americans, but it affects the world as a whole. And I wanted to look at that a little bit in chronological order, in case you weren't aware of the new things that were coming out. So we'll look at map 1, which we've just gone over, which was the first announcement of the NSA spying on the U.S. So when we found out that Snowden was in Hong Kong, the metadata was just affecting us as American citizens. Then we hit map 2. Snowden confirms China's suspicions of U.S. spying. The NSA hacked into the Chinese cell phone carriers and harvested over 900 billion text messages in 1 year alone in 2012. So one thing the United States can no longer say to China is that it's holier than they are. You know, this back and forth, you're spying on us, no, you're spying on us, you know, we're taking your, you know, your ideas, you're hacking into us. Well, it's pretty much proven now that the United States can't say that they're, you know, they're above it all, because they certainly are hacking into China. Map number 3, we have then Snowden leaving Hong Kong for Moscow. Ecuador begins talks of asylum, and that's then the leaks come out that the United States has bugged the European Union embassy in Belgium with the help of the United Kingdom. So now we're found out to be in bed with the UK in bugging all of the other EU countries in Belgium when they meet. And that was through a internet cafe, of all things. They were actually hacking into the computers that the diplomats were using. So now we're hacking our friends over in the EU. The French, yes?
You know, I personally don't have a problem with spying on other countries. I have a problem with them spying on me. But if you were in the military and you were going to spy on Russia, I have absolutely no problem with that. I have no problem with submarines spying on the Russian base.
Russia's better than the United States. That's what Echelon was, the countries spying on each other for each other.
If you had a diplomat, let's say in Benghazi, and you found out that that country had wiretapped an office that was supposed to be clean, that was supposed to be, say, technically U.S. soil, wouldn't you have an issue with that country betraying our trust by bugging a U.S. embassy?
You know, maybe you look at me as a salamander, okay? What's good for me is good for me. And I don't want somebody doing it to me, but I don't mind them doing it to them.
I am of a sort that if I don't want it done to me, then I'm not going to do it to other people either.
I don't believe that at all.
That's fine. That's fine.
We pay for the buildings in Australia to kill somebody else's family if they don't belong to
Well, what we look like right now to the rest of the world, and it really comes up even more later, is we're the imperialists here. We're bullying other countries around to get more and more data.
Control.
Right, control, data. We want data. It doesn't matter how we get it. It doesn't matter, what friendships we break. And eventually, this was probably going to come out. 850,000 contractors, somebody's going to spill the beans somewhere. But the French and German governments, when they found out about the embassies being bugged, they were furious. Angela Merkel said she was outraged, and she said, this is no longer the Cold War. If this is confirmed that they've been spied upon, we will clearly say that bugging friends is unacceptable. The U.S. didn't make any apologies. They really didn't say anything about this bugging. But they did start calling every other country that they were allied with to try to stop Snowden from getting to any other country to get asylum. So now you have all the conversations behind closed doors. We want you to shut down your airspace. We want you to do everything you can. Do you have any information? Joe Biden makes a call to Ecuador. Look, you don't want to get involved. Your trade agreement is up for renewal, isn't it? You don't want anything to hurt that. To which the president of Ecuador said, where you can take your trade agreement and stuff it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think what the gentleman doesn't understand is your government is the United States is no longer your government. The United States is taken over by the Bilderberg Group, the Federal Reserve. They are, it is a BC government. Our government, there's a coup has occurred. Yes, your government is no longer the good United States that it used to be. It's been stolen. It's been stolen from us, and we spy on everyone, or they actually spy on us. They spy on everybody. They are not. It is not the free United States that it used to be. The government's been taken over by these world millionaires.
I think if you went,
doesn't understand.
Here.
I don't think if you went across the sea and you asked a German, what do you feel? They wouldn't say I'm anti-American. They would say I'm anti-U.S. government because they're in the same boat we are right now. They just found out that they've been betrayed by their own government. Map number 4. We find out Moscow was hosting the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, and the president of Bolivia, whose name is Evo Morales, was leaving or attempting to leave Moscow at the time after the forum, and the U.S. government got on the phone very quickly and said, well, we think that Edward Snowden might be on that plane to Bolivia. And we would like you to do something about it. So, Portugal, Italy, Spain, and France all denied the president of Bolivia access to their airspace. That plane was forced to land in Austria. Basically, think of a big air wall. They couldn't go any further. They were detained for 14 hours until Vienna said, okay, it's all clear. There's nobody else on this plane. And they were finally allowed to leave. Now, again, I ask you, if the President of the United States had been on an airplane and somebody from Europe had said, oh no, Mr. President, we're not going to let you leave until we search your plane, I think within 14 hours, the Marines probably would have been deployed. We would have been over there to get our president. But somehow that's okay for us to do. No, for us to do for a Latin American president is just, you're on your own. So the idea with this map really is to show that this whole scandal has hit the entire world. It's not just the United States that was affected. It's not just U.S. citizens that were affected. It was us, and then all across Europe, comply. You're dealing with the United States now, comply or else. And they did. They wanted to appease the United States, and so they complied. We get onto map 5, and I will speed it up, sorry, Lowell, where we hit some more EU scandal. The EU headquarters in Washington, D.C., and the EU headquarters in New York were both bugged by the United States. And again, I understand where you're coming from, sir, but this is us telling these countries, you have a safe haven here, and this is your little bit of soil on our land where you should feel completely safe. Meanwhile, it's bugged. We're listening to every conversation that they say, and that would be the Italians, the Greeks, the South Koreans, the Indians, the Turks, the Japanese. Snowden had paperwork showing that all of these little embassies on the United States soil were bugged. EU President Martin Schulz said that the U.S. spying was similar to KGB methods and will have a severe impact on EU-U.S. relations for decades to come. It was also then revealed that Germany was cooperating with the United States as well and helping us, the United States, to spy on their own people. And that's where the Germans said, okay, enough is enough, because they've been through some stuff. They've already been through this twice already. And Angela Merkel, she's up for election, so she had to do a 180 spin and say, why she wasn't upset about spying on her own people all of a sudden. And then the last bit of leaked information we got was map 6. If you see now, we've got all of Latin America colored in. The U.S. was found to also collect data on our friends in the South. Most of them are so poor they really can't do anything about it. Even if they're angry, they still have to stay friends with the United States because they count on that trade agreement with the United States. That's their livelihood. It's not just the leftist countries like Venezuela, Argentina that the United States was spying on. It's also Brazil, Colombia, and of course Mexico. So Brazil, for one, was fuming about the information, but again, we're one of the biggest investors in Brazil, so at this point, they can't really say anything. They have to keep their mouth closed just to keep good ties on our good side. Now, Edward Snowden does have one more very large weapon in his arsenal, but he's holding that one back, and your guess is as good as mine what it is, but he's holding that one back just to, keep his life, I think, in the event that he would ever be captured or disappeared. That would be the last one that would come out. Meanwhile, there are protests across the world. You just don't see them on Fox and CNN. But if you can bring up the Stasi. Protests have occurred in Hong Kong, in Germany, in Russia, and the UK. And on July 4th, there was marches in about 100 cities in the United States. And again, we don't see this in mainstream media, but we do need to funnel this outrage And whether you think that Snowden is a traitor or a hero is beyond the point. The point is that we're fighting a government that's really taking control of our privacy and our rights, and that's something that we need to fight, every single one of us individually. We have a right to our privacy. Whether or not they are technologically advanced and they can scoop it up is not the point. The point is that they shouldn't be doing it, not at least without a specific warrant saying this person, A, B, C, I want Trotta's phone records. Then they can have Trotta's phone records. Until they have that, it should be a hands-off. Right now, we have a couple of movements going. Dave went over the one with Justin Amash in the Congress. In the Senate, Rand Paul is trying to work with the ACLU in a lawsuit against the NSA. The Liberty Act, we went over in the Congress. And we did mention last month that we were targeting Andy Harris for some of his bad record on privacy rights. Well, we would like to see him make the right choice on this one, and we would like to see him vote for the Amash amendment. We put out a letter to everyone just before I started, and if you could, there's a place on there for city and state where we've been told also if you fill out your whole address, you will actually get a response back from the congressman. So if you want to fill out your whole address and get a response back, that'd be a great thing. But this is a chance for Dr. Harris to actually make a good choice, try to fix some of the wrongs that he's made, and vote correctly for once. He's on the House Appropriations Committee. No doubt he knows how much these types of things cost, especially $10 to $20 billion just to run the prison program, at the minimum. And if he wants to run on a ticket of fiscal conservatism, that's going to be a good start. Would be defunding the NSA prison program. So we do want him to publicly come out against the government spying on law-abiding Americans. Any questions before they give me the yank?
What's that an address?
Yeah, we're going to collect the letters at the end.
Instead of our address, we can just say, you can just get a hold of us to the NSA, they know where I'm at.
You could try that. You could try that. Of course, the idea is to make it simple for them because they are simple people. Yes, sir.
In the 60s, there was a very clear enemy. We were against the KGB,
right,
communism. And now, we've been taken over. The only thing that protected us was our Constitution. And once they bypass that, the enemy is here.
Yep. Russia's probably
very well said. Yes, Bob?
You talked about the enforcing the flight down to the president of I believe it was Bolivia. If that much effort is put into getting Snowden, why can't we put that much effort into finding out what happened with Benghazi, finding out what's going on with the IRS scandal? These are the ones that need the light that they shined on. The ones that are breaking their oaths to you, to the people of this country. Those are the people that we need to expose. And Edward Snowden, who comes forward, and says, hey man, I can't in good faith continue to do this. This is who our government is going after. Our government is not representing us.
I suspect it's kind of in line with the Common Core program. They are training the people that come next not to talk. Because if you talk, you will most certainly have a horrible future, like Edward Snowden. You will lose everything, and they will haunt you for the rest of your life. And they want it to be completely clear that that's what's going to happen.
he gave up a six-figure job, six-figure job in a house in Hawaii to do this, and now he's living in exile in Russia. So, it wasn't about money.
Right.
What can we do?
Yeah, and I just want to say, look, we're all about keeping the country safe, and we want the people that are threats to this country investigated, and us figuring out who they are and getting to them before they do something to us.
Sure.
But I really learned something from that Boston bombing. And that oldest brother, the Saudi government had warned us about him. They refused him coming into Saudi Arabia to go on the pilgrimage after they investigated him, in other words. The Russian government warned our government, did a whole file on him, on what he had done over in Russia and who he was hanging with. And then the guy's Facebook page was all about jihad. Now, if our government isn't watching somebody like that, okay, that is clearly everybody's warning us a threat. What the hell are they doing watching us? That's my question.
The jihad.
They're not watching, they're financing it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you'll bear with us, just give us a couple more minutes. We have one update from a great friend of Campaign for Liberty, Bill Whalen, about the Plum Tree Apartments issue, and he's going to do that, and we'll make one announcement, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Let's give Bill a hand.
I've spoken before this group before. It was on the Walmart, and something very closely associated with that is the 198 apartments which are blocked down at 24 in Plum Tree. Does anybody know that a decision has been made on that by show of hands? That's the problem. Maybe one or two people do know, and it hasn't been much publicity on it. Well, the apartments went through an appeal process, which is a little different than going first through a community input meeting like the Walmart did, and then the DAC process, which was overwhelmingly opposed, as you well know, by the citizens. Just real quickly, the Walmart is almost as what I would call at a standstill. Information is going back and forth between the traffic people from Walmart and the planning and zoning department, and nothing has been approved. That's why it's not been in the news. That's why it's been fairly dormant. You'll probably hear something from the Bel Air South Community Foundation. But my main goal, and I'll get through this, hopefully in 3 minutes, I'll skip over it, but the hearing examiner made his final 22-page written decision on July 8th, and he recommended approval to permit the planned residential development for the 198 apartments. What is really interesting is the fact that his decision was completely contrary to the Harford County Planning and Zoning Department. The rationale by the Planning and Zoning Department in the report of January 17th clearly showed that the developer had not given them the revised traffic impact analysis as requested, and they had not adequately addressed Section 267.9I of the code and other requests for additional information. I won't go over that code. Despite the denial request by the Department of Planning and Zoning and the testimony provided to the hearing examiner by the public and the representatives of the Department of Planning and Zoning, the hearing examiner's decision was completely skewed, my opinion, and written in favor of the applicant and the developer. The examiner accepted and agreed with all the testimony by the witnesses for the applicant, who he described as experts in their fields, while in his report downgrading and contradicting the testimony given by reps for the Department of Planning and Zoning. By the way, Planning and Zoning was surprised by the decision, and they're not happy with the decision. I'll give you one example, and that's it, and I'll sum up. On page 19 of the examiner's report, he's quoted as saying, despite the brouhaha, whatever that meant, concerning the traffic analysis, it is found there's no requirement in the board's review of a special development or special exception that Harford County be given sufficient information by an applicant to allow Harford County to make a decision. That's completely erroneous statement. They need that information in order to base their decision. In fact, if it were true, why did he not allow testimony? Why did he allow testimony on traffic, which was probably 2 of the 3 sessions back in February? He also said, this would really got me, the opening of Tollgate Road through the subject property would, if anything, allow traffic to flow more readily and freely and should decrease traffic congestion in the area. Let me tell you, traffic is going to be on Tollgate Road all the way down, and you all know all those little feeders that go into that. I couldn't believe the report. It is what it is. I'm surprised that a lot wasn't said in the news. I have written to the Aegis. You may see something in there tomorrow. There was something in the Dagger this week, which prompted Vicki to call me to give the update on where it is. Friends, it's a case about traffic. It's a case about safety. It's a case about citizens' rights. It's about citizens' privacy. And it's just not what Mr. Cahoe, the hearing examiner, is saying. Well, what happens next? This decision can be appealed, and it will be appealed, and the deadline for that appeal is August the 5th. We intend to appeal it, meeting with People's Council in a day or two. They'll appeal it for the public, the people that are living in the area. The problem is a lot of people don't even know about this and what's going on. And the main thing that I objected to is they wanted to close off the light at 24 and Plumtree, and even the emergency department, the fire department, which is Patterson Mill, are completely opposed to that. So, official copy of the hearing examiner's report can be found. If anybody wants to see me, they can pull it up right on the internet. It's public information, and I'll give that information to you. Thank you. I hope I got through at the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Remember our action items, and we have one that we didn't mention, which is really, really important. And we have a young man here with us tonight, and he talked about, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are their action items? You know one of them, right? You're going to email those 2 key email addresses that don't just go to staffers, they go to the top of Andy's organization. And then Bob Phillips is going to tell us about something else you can do, which is phenomenal. Just from right, no, okay, Bob.
There's an anti-O'Malley rally August the 9th. August the 9th, Martin O'Malley is going to be in Cecil County. The information is on cecilliberty.org. From 1:30 to 3:30 at the corner of Pulaski Highway and Chesapeake Boulevard, there's a rally going on. Martin O'Malley is going to be speaking there. And we want to get as many people out as possible to let him know that, we don't want Maryland to become the California or the Detroit of the East Coast. That's his goal. And he wants Maryland, at the rates he's going, he's going to turn this into Detroit.
Well, besides the fact that he wants to be president. Excellent. So, rally against O'Malley on August 9th. August 9th and 10th is the barbecue bash. We'll have a booth there. Help us out if you can. We'll be giving out constitutions. It's going to be awesome. It's a great way to talk to people, enlist people's help. Send those emails. And then our next meeting is the 4th what? Tuesday of every month, right? So that's August 27th in August. And thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for being here.